Hello. We need to talk about the election, not the actual 2016 election, but the election process. There is a lot to talk about, so I've made a lot of notes so that I don't forget anything. And we're probably going to put this in two parts, two videos. So, to begin, as you probably or should know by now, there are first primaries. We had ours in Oklahoma several months ago. Primaries, the purpose of a primary is to narrow down the candidate to one per party. There are open primaries and there are closed primaries. Oklahoma is a closed primary state. In an open primary, you as a registered voter can go vote for any candidate, no matter what party you are registered as. In a closed primary, you as a registered voter can only go vote in the primary of the party you are registered as. So, for example, it has always been that only registered Republicans could vote in the Republican primary here in Oklahoma, and only registered Democrats could vote in the Democratic primary in Oklahoma. However, during this cycle, the Democrats in Oklahoma changed the rules, and for the Democratic primary, you could be Democrat or Independent to vote in their primary. So that's how we chose our candidates that we have now. Now, the people, all go vote in November. And of course, the news media tells us who the president is before even the voting has stopped. However, we do not know who the president is technically until January. And that is because in December, a month later, the Electoral College votes. And then in January, when Congress goes back to office, goes back to work, those votes are read on the floor of Congress. So they become public record. And there it is official who the president is. So, we're going to talk a lot about the Electoral College and then more about voting, of course. The Electoral College, why it was created. Well, like everything in the Constitution, it was created out of compromise. There were those that wrote the Constitution that thought, oh no, we cannot let the general population vote on the president. We can't let them choose the president because they have no idea. They have no idea who to pick or what they're doing. Now, they weren't really calling us stupid. They did have a very valid point in that there was no mass media. And so the general population really would have no idea unless they happened to be around among the political arena. You wouldn't know the candidates unless a candidate was from your state. And so it would just be everyone voting for the candidate that was closest to them kind of thing. So they were very worried about that. There were others that wrote the Constitution that said, whoa, we absolutely must have the population vote for the president. That is democracy. That is popular sovereignty. That is keeping the power with the people. So we have the compromise. The people vote in November, the electors vote in December. Second thing, out of that compromise, of course, tells you that one of the purposes for the Electoral College was that those in the Electoral College were the ones that knew all the candidates and knew what was going on. And so when they did go vote in December, they used their own knowledge and wisdom. And of course, they took into great account the people's will. But they used their own knowledge and wisdom because they knew all the candidates, knew all of what was going on. Be very clear that you understand the Electoral College has not worked that way in a very long time. In 70 years or so, the Electoral College has not worked that way. The electors do not use their own knowledge and wisdom. Has nothing to do with that. Can't tell you how many papers I've read from students saying, oh, well, I'm glad we have them because they're the ones that know. They are only delegates casting a vote the way the people voted. Make sure you understand, for the last few decades, that is the only way it's worked. For my generation, the generation before me. Okay, now, hopefully we have that clear. Let's get some details about the Electoral College. There are the same number of electors as House of Representatives and Senators. So the same number of congressmen is what we have in the Electoral College. It is not the congressmen that are the Electoral College. That would be like an oligarchy. No, but that's how we come up with that number and how they would be distributed state to state. So, for example, Oklahoma has 2 senators. Every state has 2. And we have 5 House of Representatives. So we have 7 electoral votes. Now, that would mean that we would have 535 electoral votes. However, the 23rd Amendment added 3 electoral votes to the District of Columbia. So we have 538. I'm sorry, I should make this a lot more fun with like little flashcards and things, but okay. 538 is a total number of electoral votes. So we're a democracy. Takes 50% plus 1, which means 270. It takes 270 votes to win the presidency. 270 electoral votes. Now, we also had one other major change in the Electoral College. Originally, the electors cast 2 votes. One for their first choice, one for their second choice, for president. And then whoever had the most votes was president, and whoever had the second most votes was vice president. It was the runner-up system. So, in the election of 1800, John Adams, our second president, was running for re-election. Running against him was Thomas Jefferson, with his running mate, Aaron Burr. Now, sorry, in class, we talked later on about why no one wanted Adams re-elected. But anyway, they didn't. And so the electors went and cast their vote for Thomas Jefferson and cast their vote for Aaron Burr. However, there was nothing on paper to distinguish this one was for vice president. So what happened? We had a tie. Burr and Jefferson tie. So took a lot of political wrangling and 36 votes in the House. Thomas Jefferson was our third president. But that also got us the 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment. The 12th Amendment abolished the runner-up system. So now they still cast 2 votes, but now it's very clear. This one is for president. This one is for vice president. Also, it's very clear that if no candidate gets the 270, the required majority, then the top 3 candidates go to the House of Representatives for them to vote on. In this situation, it is the only situation, each state in the House of Representatives only has 1 vote. So even though California has 50-something representatives, they still only have the same amount of votes as Oklahoma. So, and if no vice president gets the required number of votes, then it goes to the Senate for them to vote among the top candidates. Which, by the way, let's just say, that has happened with the vice president once in the 1800s. It has happened with the president 3 times. All were in the 1800s. So, if someone says, well, we should get rid of the Electoral College because what if you don't even get enough electoral votes and then the House has got to decide? No, that's not enough reason to get rid of it. That hasn't happened in 140 years. So, okay, let's move on. The way this actually works, which I hope, bear with these videos. This is a lot of information. Take good notes. But it's way better than reading the 35-page article and writing a long research paper like students used to have to do. Okay, so we have an Oklahoma Democratic Party. We have an Oklahoma Republican Party. We actually have an Oklahoma Libertarian Party and some others. But anyway, they did a lot of work throughout the year, getting through the primaries and all. And all of those people that worked in those parties did it for volunteer, no pay. There are very, very few paid positions in politics, campaigning. So, around their state convention, they decide, they look around, let's say the Democrats. The Oklahoma Democrats, towards a couple months before the November election, look around at their most loyal, hardest working volunteers. And, they couldn't pay them, so as a treat, they say, okay, you're on the Electoral College. And so they pick 7. And then at the same time, the Oklahoma Republicans are choosing 7 of their most loyal, hard-working volunteers. Now, when we go vote in November, let's just say that Oklahoma votes the way that we have tended to in the past, and we vote Republican for president. So what that would mean is in December, on the same day, all of the electors from all of the states go to their own state capital and cast a vote. So they don't all come together. So what would happen in that scenario is the 7 chosen electors for the Republican Party in Oklahoma would go to the Oklahoma state capitol and vote. The Oklahoma Democratic electors would stay home because they lost. They didn't win. So that's how that works. Now, also, just a note, when we voted in November, that is completely confidential. And those people actually placed their personal vote in November also. But when they go vote at the state capitol, that's not their personal vote. They are a delegate for the state of Oklahoma. So that is a public vote. We know how they voted. Okay, so now let's look a little bit more microscopically at that scenario. In November, if we're saying we go by the way tradition has been in Oklahoma, well, it's not been that 100% of Oklahomans vote Republican, no. So, let's say 55% vote Republican. And let's say 40% vote Democrat. Okay, now 48 states have the winner take all. And that means that because the Republicans won the majority here, they get all of our 7 electors. And that's why in that scenario, the 7 Republicans go to the Capitol and vote. The 2 states that do not have the winner take all are Maine and Nebraska. Maine and Nebraska. They do not have the winner take all. They have proportional. So they divide them up according to how the state voted. Now, we might come back to that winner take all later. But why do some people want to get rid of the Electoral College? We all know we have problems in our election system. So there's a lot of talk on what to do about it. And if you look at countries around the world, one of the problems, really big, that is not even to do with this Electoral College, is apparently in America, we don't want people to vote because we make it very difficult. If you look around the world, there are quite a few countries where voting day is a holiday and nobody works. You get off all day, go vote. Or voting is a Saturday, or voting is open for 2 weeks, or registering is automatic, so it's not something you have to consciously go out and do. We don't really make it easy at all for people to vote. But let's look at the Electoral College. Some people say that we should get rid of it because of this winner-take-all system. It's not fair. It's not democratic. It seems like the proportional method is more democratic. So let's talk about that. The counter-argument to that. There is a very good scholarly journal that explains this that students have had to read in the past also. But it's like sports, which, sorry, I'm not a baseball person, but he was talking baseball. Is that it's like the World Series. That we determine the champions of the World Series through a series of games. Not through one great grand game, and not through totaling up all home runs ever done and whoever has the most wins. It's a series of games. And that is how we choose the president. It is not one election in November, it is a series of 51 elections. Each state's election and Washington, D.C., because that's where the 3 votes went in the 23rd Amendment. And we have that series so that states have a role. That's federalism. Federalism's important. Okay, so we might come back to that later. So the winner take all, I don't know if that's a strong argument or not. Let's think about it. Another reason why people want to get rid of it. They say faithless electors. A faithless elector is an elector in the Electoral College who goes to the state capitol and votes for the other guy. So they pledged to vote their party, but they get there and they just can't do it, and so they vote the other guy. So people say, well, we should get rid of the Electoral College because nothing makes those people vote that way when they get there. Well, that is the weakest argument because that has never caused a problem. So there's no reason to go through a constitutional amendment to change something that has never been a problem. Faithless electors are rare. They are not common. The most important thing is they have never changed the outcome of an election. They have never changed the outcome of an election. And it's public record. So one of the really big deterrents is everyone for generation after generation is going to know that you were faithless. And then a lot of states have penalties. They will fine you or put you in county jail or something. I don't know. Okay. So the big states also say another reason to get rid of it is because it gives the little states too much power, or it gives them more power than what they should have. So let's look at that. What that means is if you took the whole population of Oklahoma and divided it into the whole population of the United States, we only count about this much. Now, 7 is still a very small number, but if you take 7 and divide that into 538, we count about this much. So it's still a small amount, but it gives us a little bit more of a voice. So that argument is never going to go away because all of the small states are going to say, no, we need to have that little extra edge, and the big states are going to be saying, no, we don't want them to have it. So, let's talk about what's good about it, why we should keep it. But I'm going to talk about that in the next video so that those that may have heard this part can take a break, and people in class that have already heard this part don't have to watch this first part again.